welcome to Day Home Divas. I'm Joanne,
I'm Sophia.
I'm Cash.
and on this episode, we are going to discuss the new subsidy, the childcare subsidy program. But first, we're going to take a quick look back at previous childcare subsidies. So in 2010, the eligibility for Alberta daycare subsidy was based on a family's income and the number of children in care. So the maximum income subsidy for a single parent in 2010 was $35,100 a year in income. The maximum subsidy for two parents in 2010 was $39,600 in income. The number of children, the subsidy was 628 per month per child for infants in childcare centers. The subsidy was 546 per month per child of other ages. In 2016, a single parent of a toddler could earn up to $50,000 annually and receive full subsidy and receive partial subsidy up until their income exceeds $62,100. The highest income threshold was for a two-parent family with 4 infants, so 0 to 18 months, attending a daycare program. This family could make up to $116,500 and receive a partial subsidy. The subsidy amount ranged from $106 to $266, depending on the family's income. In 2017, this all changed. There were 109,500 licensed and approved childcare spaces in Alberta as of March 2016. With more children receiving care in private day homes. The NDP government launched a pilot program in 2017, which included 18 participating daycare centers that would offer the $25 a day program, which later jumped to 78 centers. They also plan to continue the existing care subsidy, which offered full and partial subsidies to more than 24,500 children. Families making less than $50,000 a year could qualify for full subsidy. And the average cost of an infant in 2018 for childcare was $1,250 per month. The government paid $10 million to launch the pilot project, which inevitably was canceled in 2021. Later in 2021, Alberta expanded the eligibility for childcare subsidies, the families earning up to $90,000 per year. Justin Trudeau launched a new subsidy and grant program which would eventually have parents only paying $10 a day for childcare for families earning under $180,000 annually, which is a huge jump from the $50,000 cap in 2017. The program would be based on income, but all families earning under $180,000 mark would receive some amount of subsidies, and all parents, regardless of income, would receive the child care grant. For example, a family earning $75,000 per year with one toddler attending a daycare program would be eligible for full subsidy. If the fee at that program is $1,000 per month, the daycare program will receive $510 a month in an affordability grant, and the family would be eligible for $266 a month. The remaining parent portion would be $224 a month, or approximately $10.30 a day. A family earning $130,000 per year with an infant attending a daycare program would be eligible for a partial subsidy. If the fee at that program is $1,200 per month, the program will receive $635 a month in affordability grant, and the family would be eligible for $266 a month in subsidy, and the remaining parent portion, $339 a month, or $1,550 a day. Now, here we are in 2025, and the whole new subsidy program has been launched as of April 1st. That has every parent with a child in one of the 85% of daycare centers or agency-run day homes paying a flat fee of $326.25 a month. Okay, there'll no longer be subsidies or grants, just the flat fee, which will have some lower income families paying significantly more each month. Centers and providers are able to charge parents additional fees for food, transportation, field trips, and so on top of the flat fee. As long as they can account for the fees with receipts, And really, we all know how expensive gas and groceries are right now. So this could easily double that flat fee. According to the Alberta government website, as part of the 3.8 billion Canada-wide early learning and childcare agreement, Alberta is supporting families to access affordable childcare no matter where they live or which provider they choose, which really that's misleading, right? As private day home providers and nannies are not included. So they should have said, no matter which provider they choose, as long as we, aka the government, approve them first. Starting April 1st, 2025, parents with children up to kindergarten age attending full-time licensed daycare facilities and family day home programs across the province will be eligible for a flat parent fee, $326.25 per month. Parents requiring part-time care will pay $230 per month, opposed to a flat monthly parent fee. Parents with children in preschools will instead have a reduction of up to $100 of their preschool programs' stated monthly childcare fees. So the government has now put a regional cap on childcare spaces. The caps, most spaces around 1,200 a month now in 2025, when in 2022, daycare spaces range from 1,500 to 2,200 per month for infants. We all know the cost of living and operating a business has skyrocketed in the last couple of years. So why are they claiming childcare spaces have dropped in cost, right? So any provider or daycare center that was charging more than their regional cap a month per space will now have to accept the lower income, unless they charge extra fees to parents. Providers are now required to pay the monthly agency fees for the privilege of offering cheap childcare. That's another $550 minimum coming from the provider's income. And that's if the agency doesn't charge additional fees. The providers don't get the luxury of opting out of the additional fees like the parents do. And some agencies are charging more than the $550. That's unfortunate for providers as well, right? The optional service and supplemental parent fee guidelines, affordability funding, and monthly parent fees combined to enable the continued delivery of high quality childcare. This includes the reasonable costs associated with HR and staffing costs, facility and operational costs, programming costs, administrative costs. Programs will be permitted to charge supplemental parent fees for services that are optional for parents to choose for their child. So the supplemental parent fees will be an additional parent fee every month. Optional services may include services that programs were not able to charge additional fees for previously. Parents must have the choice whether to participate and pay for an optional service. Programs will be required to report to the Ministry of Jobs, Economy and Trade on the optional services they provide for a supplemental parent fee. That one applies for daycare centers, not the day home provider, like individually. They would report to the agency and the agency would then report it from there. Examples for optional services for which supplemental parent fee may be charged include field trips, meals or snacks, transportation, overnight care, diapers, sunscreen, extended hours care, cultural activities, on-site experimental learning, and specialized classes. Except for the flat monthly parent fee, any mandatory parent.
I just have to say though, is that they brought out the overnight care so everyone can go into work and work different hours and longer hours to compensate, and now they're pretty much taking it away or charging you for it.
Exactly. Yeah, it honestly it's frustrating, right? And it's not very clear for parents, it's not very clear for providers, because if some people that work shift work, they absolutely need that overnight care. Providers should be allowed to charge extra for that because I mean, we all work 10 plus hours a day. So now if you're extending that, there should be the allowance to charge extra for it. Okay, programs will continue to be prohibited from charging additional general administration fees, operational and equipment fees to parents. Programs cannot show preferential treatment to children whose parents pay supplemental parent fees or optional fees. Realistically, is that going to be the case though, right? If you've got limited space and you've got some parents that are saying, nope, we won't pay these extra fees, and you've got others willing to pay those extra fees, realistically, who are they gonna give the spaces to, right? Providers cannot limit or deny access to care if parents choose not to receive optional services. Examples of ineligible operational, administrative, and equipment fees include child contract fees, termination fees, value add fees, NAP fees, supply fees, technology fees, and toy fees. Programs are permitted to charge parents penalty fees for certain targeted actions. This leaves providers and centers open to charge quite a bit extra in fees. I've seen some providers talking about additional fees ranging from $100 a month extra to $300 a month. So and it's left up to each provider and center to make the decisions for themselves, right? So this program also excludes, again, privately run day homes, nannies, anyone paying a friend or family member to take care of their child. There are over 100,000 children on waiting lists in Alberta for these childcare spaces that will offer the flat fee, while the government keeps promising to create more spaces, all the while overlooking their simplest and most obvious solution, which is make the flat fee available directly to the parents to allow them to choose private run day homes, nannies, etc., which really it should have been the case in the beginning. The funds should always be going directly to the parents. That's the only way to make them truly in charge of who they choose for their providers. According to a report by Michelle Belafontaine, provincial affairs reporter for the CBC News, Jobs, Economy and Trade Minister Matt Jones announced Thursday that every Alberta parent with a child in full-time daycare will pay a flat fee of $326.25 a month. Alberta will introduce $15 per day childcare on April 1st, but the province is also ending a childcare subsidy program. We have seen some parents posting on Facebook, mom groups, that they paid next to nothing for their daycare fees. Some claiming they actually did pay nothing, and now they'll be paying $326.25 per child, which for the ones that really need it, the subsidy, this is basically screwing them over. The really low income single parents were paying zero or $50 a month, whatever they were paying, and now that's doubling, tripling. It's going to make it tough for them. Later, Jones told childcare providers during an online town hall he believed everyone should pay their fair share. We believe everybody should be contributing to the cost of childcare, keeping in mind that the average Albertan will be receiving a valuable service that is at an 80% discount of out-of-pocket fees, which for him to, direct that at childcare providers, we're the ones doing the childcare providing. That's our contribution. Why should we be having to help supplement that care for other people, right? Maybe his wording could have been different.
And he doesn't do childcare, so how does he know that's going to be valuable?
Exactly. And how do they know the costs? The fact that the government is setting the caps on what you can charge, how I'd like to see how they came to those numbers. What is it in the north end of the city versus the south end of the city that makes the childcare cost different? I'm guessing if you go to the grocery store to get a jug of milk, regardless of what end of the city you're in, that jug of milk is going to cost the same. So why is it making the cost of running a business different? Alberta needs to create up to 68,700 new childcare spaces, with 42,500 allocated to public or nonprofit facilities under the $3.8 billion Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement. The agreement is intended to bring childcare fees to $10 a day by 2026. Jones said Alberta is increasing its annual contribution from $250 million to $720 million annually. That's for a country that is, and this time I have looked up how to say this giant number. It is $1,236.2 billion in debt. Where is this 720 million annually coming from? Is this really the best way to use that money when our healthcare system is in shambles, our education system is crumbling? It seems so high, right? The amount that we're putting into, when there's definitely a better way they could have done it. They could have, if they focus more on the families that actually need the service, that actually need the help, instead of just everybody gets it, right? It seems very wasteful, I guess is the
And
nice
then
way.
the ones who do need help, um, they can't afford the $325 a month,
Exactly.
right? And it's not fair.
It's
Yeah.
not, yeah. So in 2022 to 2023, Canada spent 9.818 billion on regulated childcare. According to Childcare Now, this was a 61% increase from 2018 and 2019. Now, I get that times change. I get that cost of living and everything increases, but just earlier said, they're claiming that the cost of operating the business has decreased. So why are we increasing this amount by 61% in a short period of time? That seems ridiculous. Matt Jones also sent a letter to Federal Minister of Families, Children and Social Development calling childcare funding unsustainable. Childcare funding in Alberta is unsustainable without more money and flexibility from the federal government, according to Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade Matt Jones. In a letter sent to Jenna Subs, the Federal Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, dated February 10th, Jones said, without increased funding and flexibility, Alberta will be unable to proceed with a renewal. The current early learning and childcare agreement between the federal government and Alberta expires on March 31st, 2026. Jones also said that Alberta's desire to have a fully income tested system where childcare is most affordable for Alberta's lowest income families, with targeted government funding also utilized to reduce the cost of childcare progressively based on household income. The current federal agreement is not flexible to allow us to income test. Say households earning under a certain amount of income, said Jones, it has to be an average of $15 per day. So also at issue is the negotiation for the next early learning and childcare agreement are the limits on what types of spaces can be created. Under the current agreement, Alberta is required to create 68,700 spaces, but is capped at a maximum of 14,500 family day home spaces and 26,200 private daycare spaces, which Jones says is counter to the objective of affordable and accessible childcare. Family day homes are some of the quickest and most cost-effective ways to create childcare spaces in areas of high need, particularly in rural and remote Alberta, said Jones, noting day home providers are primarily women. Which, I mean, he's right. Like, it's a lot more cost effective and a lot quicker for day homes to come about than it is to create a daycare center. The cost of opening and operating a daycare center is huge compared to a day home.
Insane.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the restrictions the federal government is putting on it. Alberta government is saying, "Hey, we have a quick and easy solution. Let's, you know, fix it this way." And the federal government is saying, "No, no, we need more daycares." And we're going to get into that. We have all seen the daycare centers popping up all over the place in strip malls, industrial areas, many of which have their outside play areas as part of a parking lot in a fenced-in area. A major problem with new daycare centers, particularly in areas undergoing large expansion in childcare availability, is the potential for quality issues due to high demand, understaffing, and pressure to cut costs, leading to concerns about proper child staff ratios, food safety, and overall care quality, especially when coupled with lower fees paid to operators under government funding programs. This can result in long wait lists and limited options for parents seeking quality childcare. So let's talk about some of these daycare centers we have seen popping up. Like they are everywhere.
Okay, so I was driving down Flint. No, it wasn't Flint Road. Bonaventure. It's right behind McLeod Trail. There's a long, windy road. And I was driving down there the other day and I saw a daycare in one of the parking lots. And then I looked behind the building and they had this little itty bitty square with some toys and some fake grass. And right behind that, they had a giant sea can covering it. So
What?
nobody can see in, nobody can see out. So I'm like, okay, your kids are outside playing in a parking lot, and their best view is a metal sea can.
That
I'm
is
just like, what is happening here?
crazy.
This is outrageous to me.
That
You
is,
don't even get real grass. There's no trees, and you're just off McLeod Trail. So, as a daycare provider, where are you going to walk with your kids to a park? There is no park. It's
exactly.
literally on McLeod Trail. I wouldn't want somebody taking my child for a walk down McLeod Trail
No,
for
I,
a field trip,
right?
right? Like, there's no trees. You don't get real grass. You get to stare at a metal sea can when you're outside, and you get literally a tiny little square to play in.
That is crazy.
But
How is
parents,
that a good best solution, right?
right? It's not. It's terrible. When I saw it, I was like, why? But
Yeah,
parents will choose that because it's the cheapest option.
yeah. And with the misunderstanding that in a daycare center they are safest, right?
I wouldn't feel safe with my child in that location. There's no way. There's so many busy cars. Somebody loses control and they're running right into that
Yeah.
fake play area with the sea can covering them,
It is so
right?
sad seeing those little like fenced in areas in parking
It
lots.
is.
I mean,
Yeah.
in the summer that it's so hot. And
Yeah.
they can't do pools, like they can't do little play pools, they can't do sprinklers because you're not on grass. Like,
No, can't do anything. And
no,
that fake grass gets hot in the summer.
it does.
Gets
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah. I actually looked into having it in my
There's
backyard, having dogs, but the
Mhm.
main reason I didn't was because of it gets hot and stays hot.
Yeah.
there's also a daycare on 130th that they actually watch the cars go by on the road as outdoor play.
Yeah.
That is the
Just watch it go by.
saddest thing. How are we counting cars for our educational games with children? It is crazy.
It's popped up. It's not even like it was there for a while. It just popped up within the last year.
The pop-up ones, they get me. Like how are you staffing them? How are you like how did you have the time when they come up so quickly, right? Like to ensure that you've got good staff that are educated, that are experienced because as we know, like anyone can get a level one, which is fantastic because I feel that should be the basis for, for new providers that are coming into the industry. It's still like if you don't have experience behind that, and I know the only way to get experience is to actually do it, but if the entire center is filled with inexperienced, fresh staff, how are you assuring quality care? You can't, right? I mean, I remember when I first opened, like thankfully I'd worked at a daycare before, but even my first day at the daycare, wow, was that overwhelming. You've got all of a sudden all these kids that are looking to you for like, hey, keep me safe, educate me. And it's a lot. Like, it takes a while to build that confidence, build that experience so that you know what each child needs and to recognize their individual needs. It's not something that can be done quickly. Like it's definitely an industry that people maybe don't understand how much goes into it, right? And I mean, Cash, you were saying last time with our recording attempt about a daycare that was in a kind of a shady area that had in the parking lot there was I can't remember the details if you want to elaborate on that.
Well, I've seen a few. There's a few around me where one I've seen had the drugstore right next door to them, literally connecting buildings with them. And then I've had some that have the beer store right next to them.
Yeah, that
It's
I mean imagine
why?
them, right?
Why?
I'm trying to think of them in the downtown area that have their little outdoor
Oh, that one I saw was the one where they were on a rooftop. Their play area was
right.
on a rooftop.
That's
And they
right.
had like and it's like, why would you put them on a roof of all places?
Right. And I
Because
mean,
then they feel like they're in a jail.
exactly. And the noise that must go through that, area while they're trying to play outside, all the honking and the yelling. And I mean, I've been downtown. Like, we've all been downtown and heard the yelling and heard the, like, the nonsense that goes on downtown, even like midday. It doesn't have to be in the evening, right? Midday downtown, there is constantly nonsense and noise and chaos. And I couldn't imagine being on myself, being on a rooftop exposed, like, and listening and hearing all that. And now you've got children in that it's mind-blowing that would be approved. Like,
Well, and like so many people are trying to get into like the realistic part of it, right? All the natural bases. Well, where you put in a tree on a rooftop?
exactly.
Where can you get them stuff to actually explore? You can't on a rock.
Right. And okay,
No, you can't in a parking lot either. But at least try and put a tree somewhere in the back.
right. And I mean, the discussion of how
It's insane.
private day homes are not regulated. And yes, I was trying to make the point that it's often, people will say that having a private day home, they're not, they're not regulated by the government. They're not checked up on by their agency, or like by an agency representative or person, whatever they are. You can't guarantee their quality. Well, my question to those people that say that would be, can you guarantee the quality of those daycare centers that have their outside play area in a parking lot, or next to where there's the liquor store? And I'm going all over the place because my dog is trying to climb on my lap. I'm so sorry.
But like, what about parents? Parents come to the door every single day. If they see something's not right, they can say something. I don't need somebody from the government coming once. How often do they come? I don't know.
Once every
Once
2
a
months.
year? Once a month?
Once every 2 months
Okay, I don't
is
need a
required.
government person coming once every 2 months. I have parents who come to my front door every single day. They
Exactly.
are very capable of seeing if something is okay or not,
Yeah.
or safe or not, and their children talk,
Yes.
right?
Exactly.
So,
And I definitely want to get more in depth into this topic. I want to dedicate an entire episode to the differences and, the misconceptions from private to a regulated day home. But I definitely think that, there are some misunderstandings when it comes to a daycare center, 100% safe, private day homes, not necessarily, but these daycare centers are right next to the liquor stores or the drug stores, or how is that safe? Or when their play area
the
is
cannabis store.
exactly, yeah, their play area is outside next to a parking lot where, like you said, I mean, driving down McLeod, how many accidents were on McLeod? How quick could a car be pushed off McLeod when the very edge is the daycare center? Like, the safety alone is concerning, right? So staffing shortages, rapid expansions often leads to difficulty finding qualified childcare workers, potentially resulting in inadequate staffing levels and overworked staff. I mean, we work 10 hours a day. Do we get a lunch break? Sometimes. Do we get our 15 minutes? Like your 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon? Absolutely not. How many times do we share our lunch break with other kids, right? It's being overworked and burnt out is definitely a concern in our industry. And now you're putting all this extra pressure on staff. What they're expecting, I'm not sure. So, and the cost pressures, government funding programs aimed at lowering childcare costs can sometimes put pressures on operators to cut corners on quality to maintain profitability. At the end of the day, it's a business. And aside from those nonprofit centers that are like completely government run, daycare centers, day home providers, we're in it to make our income. We're not in it to be millionaires. If anyone thought they could run a day home and get rich, they thought wrong, as we all know, right? Like, but We just need to make the income we need to pay our bills the same as everybody else. And when you put all these demands on, we want top quality care for the absolute lowest possible price, something gives, right? Whether it's the quality or whether it's
Yep.
our income. I mean, we all, pay more to our daycares. And I think being private, that often happens is we put more of our income back into our centers because we're judged higher, right? So we try and make the experience the best possible. So we're constantly revamping our daycare. We're adding more toys, adding more activities, doing more crafts because we're held to a much higher standard. The increased demand, a surge in new daycare openings can be met with a high demand for spots, leading to long wait lists and limited availability to parents. Quality concerns with the focus on expanding access concerns arise about proper oversight and enforcement of quality and standards in new facilities. How many corners are being cut, right? To get these daycare centers up quickly, something's getting cut. Some corners somewhere, they're definitely, something's being cut for sure. And the lack of experience. New daycare centers may have less experienced staff, potentially impacting quality of care, which we talked about. How fast these daycares are popping up. Where is your experienced staff coming from? I've worked at a daycare center before. I would not go back to a daycare center. There's stories that everyone can tell that's worked in a daycare center, right? And running my own childcare business, it definitely feels better. My boss treats me nicer, right? There's a lot of pressure on staff in a daycare center, right? Like sometimes you're expected to work without the breaks like we are, but we're also at home. So it's a little bit easier to grab a snack, grab, a drink here and there kind of thing. But when you're in a daycare center, sometimes just going to the bathroom can take hours. You've got to have someone cover you if you're in a daycare center, right? Like we can run to the bathroom real quick when we know the kids are safe and engaged in an activity, but you can't do that in a daycare center. You have to have a staff member come to cover you. So where is that staff member coming from? And who is covering their space? Potential for inadequate facilities. So recent reports highlight issues with some new daycares in Calgary, including concerns about understaffing, non-compliance with childcare staff ratios, and potential food safety issues. To pressures from government's childcare funding program, many daycares have stated they are struggling to stay open already. And the new funding hasn't actually hit yet, and they're already struggling. We've seen the E. coli, is it E. coli, that hit a couple of daycare centers. Are parents going to be bringing in their food now, like for the kids, or will they be paying that extra? I know as a parent myself, if I was paying extra for food and then found out my child got E. coli, I'm not going to be very happy, So there's definitely more pressures with quality for sure. Parents aren't the only ones struggling with the new program. Many agency-run day home providers will be struggling financially also. Agencies have also been given a cap of $550 a month that they can charge providers, unless, however, they offer extra services. The flat fee is being charged whether a provider has one child in their care or 6. Could you imagine you have one child because of, whatever, like when they all go to school, whatever, you're down now to one child and your agency is now saying, I want my $550 monthly. What are you left with at that point, right? I mean, running and operating with only one child to begin with is difficult, but now you lose over half your income to your agency.
Well, if you're like me and you do before and after school care, that's the 550. If I were with an agency and I had to pay 550, that's one whole child. So then that brings me down to only having receiving the income for 5 kids instead of 6,
Yeah.
right?
And some providers have claimed that their agency fee is still $900 a month, while others have said $750 and $850. The funding from the government can take up to a month to get to the agencies and providers also, leaving providers waiting on their payments. So instead of being paid at the beginning of the month for the month you're about to work, you're now being paid beginning of the month for the month you worked 2 months ago. Like it, I couldn't imagine. That's, just another frustrating part for the day home providers. There was an estimated 1,878 private childcare providers in Alberta, according to the Statistics Canada in 2021. That number has definitely increased since. More than half of Alberta's day home providers are private, but sadly, due to the exclusion of the childcare grants and subsidies in 2021, and again with the new program, so many have been forced to close, considering the government is spending so much money trying to open new childcare spaces. It's ridiculous that they continue to exclude private day homes. Like that's the easiest solution, is open this funding up and give it directly to the parents. Right? There's all your new spaces are opened. That's basically the new childcare program, the subsidy or the flat fee, I guess they call it. Anything else you guys would like to add?
I was curious if parents choose not to pay the additional fees for a field trip and food, does that mean that child gets excluded? Like not able to go on the field trips, not able to get the extra snacks, is that what that means?
So I tried to find out
And how does that child feel?
exactly. I tried to find out a definite answer as to what, because that was the first thing that came to my mind too. And honestly, it's not clear. Everything that I found said would just reiterate and say you're not allowed to force parents to pay those fees, but nothing would clarify whether that meant the child gets included and the parents doesn't pay, or whether that means the child is excluded. If I had to guess, that child
Very curious about that. Because so your guess would be that the child
would be excluded.
right. So in that case, then they would have to have more staff members for
Yeah,
the children who are not going on the field trips, and because they
exactly.
can't be put into, like, let's say a baby room because they're
So,
at
so when I worked,
ratio, right?
yeah, when I worked at a daycare center, and granted, this was many, many years ago, we did field trips. And if a child's permission form was not completed and sent in time, and our director would call the parent to try and ask for permission, but if they could not get a hold of them, whatever, the child would stay back at the daycare center in whatever room had that they could, like closest to their age. They didn't necessarily fit in the ratio, unfortunately, but they were put in another room. So like
Right, but that's not allowed though, right?
it's not. Um Honestly, there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that are not allowed that happen right in
Yeah.
a daycare center. And if you ask any parent, that never happens. It's a daycare center, but it absolutely does. And I mean, I worked with the 4, 5, and 6 year olds kind of group, and there was 6 and up that were left with the 3-year-old kids because they didn't have the required permission, which I understand. If you don't have the required permission, you can't go on the field trip. Absolutely. Of course not. But can you stay if you are, over the age limit for that room? Can you technically stay in that room? No. So,
Well, not only the age limit, but because it's a certain amount of children per staff member.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
if you're going over that and bringing another child in, then you're breaking all sorts of rules.
exactly. Yeah. But exactly what are going to be the solutions for that? The center is going to need to, like you said, have another staff member. But so now do you have to have one additional staff member at all times just there in case someone can't go? And honestly, I think it would come back to that not being able to take preferential treatment to the parents that agree to the rule, to the extra fees. I think they're going to end up giving them those parents preferential treatment just so that to avoid situations like that.
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
which is
Complete.
unfortunate.
Yep. It's so sad, but
It is. I mean, at the end of the day, the people that are going to suffer the most and have the most sacrifices like around them, it's the kids. It's because we as providers are going to go out of our way to ensure that each kid gets everything they can, right? But we are limited. There is only, especially, when you're looking at staff in a daycare center, you are so limited to what you can do. I mean, I used to bring in my own supplies and bring in my own toys, and I thought nothing of it at the time because you love those kids that you care for. So you don't think that bringing in your own like craft supplies and toys, you don't think about how wrong it is that you have to do that. You just want to make those kids happy. I mean, providers are going to go out of their way to do that and to ensure that all kids are being well taken care of. So then it's going to be at their expense. I understand that we need to help the people that really need the subsidy. And absolutely, that's what the government is there for. But I don't think you do that effectively by giving everybody the same childcare subsidy or flat fee, whatever, right? Like when you're making over $180,000 annually, cheap childcare is not necessarily required for you, right? Like, and I mean, you had the kids. You I paid for my kids to be in childcare. Like that's just when you have children, you understand that this comes along with it. And absolutely there are some that do need that help, especially like single parents. And I empathize and I think that absolutely the government should be stepping up for those people, but not for the parents that are making 180,000 plus a year. I'm sorry, but I mean they don't qualify for many other like things. Like you can't go into the food bank when you're making over 180,000 a year and ask for handouts. You can't, like there's so many things you don't qualify for, and I feel like childcare subsidy should be one of those things also,
agreed.
especially when you see parents that are complaining about how high their childcare is, but they've gone to Mexico 3 times that year, or they constantly have like new vehicles, or they're all these expensive things, but woe is me, my childcare costs are high. There has to be a balance here. Like the people that really need it are suffering, and those that have all this extra money to spend on trips and vehicles and all this other stuff, they're the ones that are benefiting. The higher income families are definitely benefiting for this program when the others are not. Does anyone
It's
have
just crazy that they keep changing it.
exactly that the lack of consistency as well, right? Like, I mean, they put in this program in April of 2025 when the entire thing could be over in 2026. Who knows what parents are going to be paying next year? Like the lack of consistency is so frustrating, and what providers will be making as income next year, and will daycare centers still be popping up like crazy? Or I mean, some of the daycare centers, like it's not sustainable for them for the pay cut that they're taking, and how many are going to close because of
But
this?
the wild part is they just did the $25 a day daycare
Yeah,
that failed miserably, and now they're starting all over again.
right. And with pretty much the same like plan. Like when one plan fails, you don't just wait a couple of years and try it again. You say, hey, what part of this plan didn't work? What can we change? What can we adjust? The one thing I did notice though for the other one is that they tried to keep the subsidy as an income based, like in the $25 a day program. Um, so I feel like that program may have had more success had it been tweaked or adjusted or something differently than this one possibly will. Because the amount that this program is going to cost taxpayers is huge. And there is so much more that this money could be like if Canada has just an extra 720 million laying around, our healthcare system, for one, that benefits everybody in the country, not just the few that have young kids at that age. Personally, I vote let's send it over to healthcare, right? Like, or our education system. I mean, how many kids are in a classroom now? My kids are beyond school, they're old. So
It's not acceptable to have 30 children per one educator in a daycare, but it is acceptable in a classroom, and I don't understand how that works.
that baffles me so much. I actually was talking to one of my day home parents just yesterday about this because they've got someone going into like kindergarten, and they could have up to 30 kids in that kindergarten class. Yet because I'm only one person, can only have 6 in my care. What is the difference? Like, what, I mean,
Right?
like, it's baffling, and I can't see it getting any better. The population growth of like Calgary and area is just growing huge. How we're not making classroom sizes smaller. There's no way, right? So it just, and not without extra funding. And I mean, I know where there's a $720 million they could maybe swing that way, but it's ridiculous.
And then you have kids roaming the hallways and causing trouble in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
But can't happen at daycare.
Nope.
None of this can happen at daycare, but everything can happen at home.
Exactly.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, there's definitely some disconnect somewhere with somebody in charge, right? That doesn't quite
And
understand.
that's government run. And yeah.
Yeah. That's it for Day Home Divas this week. Hope you tune in next week. Goodbye.